So Therese Picasso is a registered dietitian and board-certified health coach. She was a dietitian at our local hospital and clinic for several years, followed by a 5-year stint at the Red Lodge Area Community Foundation, working in community health program development. She currently sees clients in her practice, Picasso Health and Nutrition, where she takes a personalized approach to optimize their health through nutrition and lifestyle modifications.
Yes, it really does, and especially when we're talking about the blue zones. You know, the food is medicine really embodies the idea that food we consume plays a pivotal role in nourishing our bodies and preventing and treating diseases. Some of the changes that we can make through diet, we might feel the benefit right away. So for instance, if someone is sensitive to gluten and they remove gluten, they're going to feel better right away. If someone trades a handful of nuts for a cookie for their afternoon snack, their hangriness is probably going to decrease pretty quickly. But some things that we can do might take a while, several months, before we see a benefit. And that's okay, but you know, sometimes we're used to receiving a pill, swallowing it, feeling better right away, and sometimes it takes time. But consider things that Bill have mentioned: insulin resistance, fatty liver disease, heart disease, cancer, cognitive decline. They didn't happen overnight, but built up over time. So we can use nutrition for some of these things to help us get better. Small changes, big impacts. That's very important. Small shifts in the way that we live our life can lead to significant health improvements. It doesn't have to be major. It can be small, and it's a good start. Also, everything's connected. I hope to show you as we talk, and Dr. George also mentioned it, that when we work on one aspect of our life, it benefits other aspects. Like, for instance, gut health, which we could talk all day about. There's a lot of new information about gut health. So maybe you want to add more fiber to positively benefit your gut health and the integrity of the lining of your gut. Well, 70% of our immunity lies in our gut. So when you improve your gut health, you improve your immunity, which helps with many things. Most of the nutrients that we consume are absorbed in our small intestine. So when we work on the health of our gut, we're going to work on the health of how we absorb foods. Also, there's fascinating connection between our gut and brain, how they communicate with each other, and it's directly linked to our mental health and neuroprotection. There is a connection between people with IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, inflammatory bowel disease, and anxiety and mental health. So there's a definite connection. So what we're going to do with the blue zones, we're going to explore many of the aspects of the blue zones. We're going to discuss some benefits. We're going to see what the current science tells us and look at it, how it relates to us living where we are, and then some potential challenges. There are some things I'm a big fan of, and there are some that might be, we're finding out that it might be different. The first one is prioritizing plants. It's the huge one. I like to, when I work with folks, I like to challenge them by trying to get 3 colors per meal of plants, not Skittles. So in the blue zones, 95% of the food comes from a plant or plant product. It's amazing. And it's a wide variety. Most is homegrown or grown nearby. And then many of the fats are plant fats. So olives, olive oil, avocado, things like that. Science tells us that plants help with so many things. We have a lot of phytonutrients in plants. Those are what gives the plant the color, and the polyphenols in plants. And those colors give the plants resilience. And when we consume them, we benefit from that resilience. We get improved heart health, cancer protection from plants, those polyphenols in all the different colors, and improves our gut health, including the fiber, and then improves cognitive health. I just put this in here because I just think it's a beautiful photo of vegetables. Okay, challenges. Finding a majority of plants close to home. That's a challenge for us here. Consuming a variety, pesticide residue, which is a big thing, and cost. The Environmental Working Group for years now has put out the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15. The Dirty Dozen are the top 12 produce that have the highest pesticide residue. So if you're trying to save some money but you want to get organic, I would choose the Dirty Dozen, okay? And always wash your produce. Apples, since I've been looking at this for the last 20 years, has always been on the Dirty Dozen. Strawberries as well. They kind of move back and forth. As you notice, the Clean 15 are some that have something that, like a covering, like the watermelon. You may peel your carrots, potatoes, that you may take some off. Avocado. So,
Are organics better in those, like organic blueberries?
I feel in the perfect world, we would consume all organic or chemically free as we can. But if the cost is an issue, I would focus on getting organic for the Dirty Dozen and then conventional for the Clean 15. Okay, protein. The blue zones, according to the research, consumes meat no more than twice a week, 2 ounces or less at a time, 3 ounces of fish on most days, reduced processed meat, less from dairy as they became less tolerant of lactose as they age, which is something that definitely does happen. It's happening to me right now. And they combine plant foods to provide protein needed, like a mustard green and chickpeas, edamame and walnuts, beans and corn. But the science is showing us, is this enough protein? And Bill touched on it, and we'll go into a little bit more. Current guidelines is 0.8 grams per kilogram, or about 0.4 grams per pound. But studies are recommending for seniors that it's nearly double that. And I will talk to you about a study that I find really interesting. It's 1.2 to 1.6 grams per kilogram. So if you take your weight in pounds divided by 2.2, that gives you your weight in kilograms. And then you can do the math there, or you can do roughly 0.5 to 0.75 grams per pound. So if someone's 165 pounds, they would have 90 to 120 grams of protein per day, roughly. That's recommended. Unless you're doing more resistance training, and it might be even a little more. Ideally, you want to make it more bioavailable. You want to evenly space that protein out throughout the day. Oops. Now, these are the benefits of protein. The first one is the build muscle mass and slow muscle decline, which is the sarcopenia. Now, this is the study that I thought was really fascinating. Let's see. And it's about anabolic resistance. It measured the amount of muscle synthesis or new muscle formation in men, two different groups of men, age around 22 and around 70, 71. The researchers gave each group a meal containing 20 grams of protein and then tested the degree of muscle synthesis. In the same sitting, both groups ate an additional 20 grams of protein, followed by a second test of muscle synthesis or muscle formation. For the around 22 aged men, there was no difference in muscle synthesis between eating 20 to 40 grams of protein in one sitting. But for the 71-year-old men, their muscles were unresponsive to 20 grams of protein. They needed 40 grams in order to show signs of muscle synthesis. So they call that anabolic resistance. My guess is with the protein that was given to older folks, they're using more of their protein instead of the muscle synthesis of fighting infection, transporting nutrients and signals, curbing hunger, repairing cells and tissues. So the sarcopenia is real, and we're finding that we do need to have resistance training to build those muscles, and we need to eat more protein. And I know when I turned 60 a couple of years ago, my goal was to be able to do a pull-up, because I had never been able to do a pull-up. And by the time I turned 60, I could do 3. And so you can get stronger as you get older. This is an example of a typical day of eating, and it gives you about, well, this is 94. A general rule of thumb, if you could try to get around 30, at least 30 to 40 grams, maybe more per meal. And so, again, some Greek yogurt, mixed berries, some nuts and seeds will give you some, and then the lean protein with the chicken breast, mixed greens, and then the salmon, medium sweet potato, steamed broccoli. That gives us about 94 grams of protein, not counting snacks. Yeah, and what the study was for the blue zones, they ate meat, very little red meat. And I'm glad you asked that, because a lot of them are living rurally, and so their meat is free range. It's, the chickens are wandering around the yard and eating what's there, and they're not fed so much as they eat what's there. And so the meat is a little different, but they eat less meat and poultry. Their protein, according to my research, was more fish and beans. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, sort of. When that slide said meat, you meant red meat, or were you meaning meat?
Meat and chicken, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and around here, our protein, we may, we can have fish seasonally. I'll talk a little bit more about fish, but we can hunt. And what I didn't mention was red meat is really dependent on what it's fed. We want omega-3 fatty acids. I'll talk a little bit more about that. And we have a balance of omega-3 and omega-6. But when we have meat that is fed and finished on grass, for instance, the meat is going to contain more omega-3 fatty acids than an animal that's fed corn, finished on corn, because corn itself has higher omega-6. This one, is this the one that you're talking about? So 2 ounces or less at a time. I feel that 30 to 40 grams is what your body can absorb. So if you go, for women, if they go much more over 40 grams per meal, your body might not absorb as much of the protein. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
How much? Too much math.
Oh.
How much protein is in 2 ounces of red meat?
So each ounce is around 8 grams. An egg is about 7 grams of protein, to give you an idea. And one thing I didn't add in the slide, I'm looking at the time, is that the blue zones, they didn't eat many eggs because they were nervous about the cholesterol in eggs. So they would not have more than 3 a week. That's also mixed and debatable. Some people have 2 to 3 eggs a day. It really depends on the individual, what their cholesterol level is, and what other things they're eating and how they're moving. Okay, seafood. These are some recommended seafood that are lower in PCB and mercury and not as overfished typically. Some of them might be, but about 3 ounces a day is what the blue zones eat. Okay, daily dose of beans, half a cup a day, 7 grams of protein and 8 grams of fiber. We need about 25 to 35 grams of fiber a day. So these beans stabilize our blood glucose. So when we eat them, the amount of blood glucose, when we eat, our blood glucose goes up and then it goes down over time. Exercise brings it down, food brings it up. But we want it to look like waves. We don't want it to shoot up and then plummet down, okay? So that's what beans helps us do. And then also, we heard about fatty liver disease. Beans help with fatty liver disease, curbs our appetite. Our gut loves beans, and it's heart healthy. But there's gas. So, to help us, we gradually increase beans, 1 tablespoon at a time. Also, interestingly enough, adding kombu seaweed, a few strips when you're soaking or cooking your beans, the enzymes in the seaweed help to absorb the oligosaccharides in the beans that cause the gas. Also, some folks are negatively affected by the lectins. It's a protein in the beans that can be toxic to some people. But soaking them and boiling them for at least 10 minutes and rinsing the water that you've soaked it in also helps decrease the lectin content. And it also decreases gas. Sourdough and other ferments, blue zones, they have sourdough and 100% whole grain sourdough. We know when we talked about our blood glucose going up, when we have sourdough, it curbs the up when our blood glucose goes up more gradually. White flour, it spikes up and then drops, and that's a hangry thing too. When our blood glucose goes down quickly, that's when we start getting hungry and start having cravings. So the benefits of sourdough, it's made naturally occurring bacteria in the air, and that bacteria digests the starches, and which makes it much lower in gluten. Now, if you have celiac disease, you should not have sourdough unless it's gluten-free sourdough, but those who are sensitive to gluten might be able to tolerate sourdough bread. I wrote if you're ever interested in a newsletter, I do a monthly newsletter. I wrote one on sourdough, and you can find it on my website, PicassoHealthAndNutrition.com. Fermented foods, super big fan of fermented foods, produces probiotics during fermentation, feeds those beneficial bacteria in the gut, improves our digestion, boosts our immune system, and makes food easier to digest. So have some every day. It's the frequency is more important than the quantity. So if you have a tablespoon of sauerkraut a couple times a day, if you have miso and you put it in your soup for the broth, kombucha, yogurt, those types of things, a little bit throughout the day is really beneficial for us. A little primer on prebiotics, probiotics. The prebiotics are the fibers that feed the good bacteria. So when you're having all those veggies, at least half of your plate, in the perfect world, you'd have some produce in them. Those are the prebiotics. The probiotics are beneficial bacteria living in our gut, but also we can feed, you're getting it from fermented foods. The postbiotics are what the probiotics produce by feeding on prebiotics. So they produce short-chain fatty acids. Short-chain fatty acids are really important for the gut lining, and that's what keeps us from having leaky gut. We'll talk a little bit more about that. So nuts. Blue zone people love nuts, eating 2 handfuls or about 2 ounces a day. If you imagine an Altoid container, those little tins, that would be about 1 ounce of nuts. If you put almonds in there, it'd be about 1 ounce, so a couple of those a day. We're finding that the nuts decrease our bad cholesterol, the LDL. There are studies that show us that it decreases mortality rate, curbs that glucose spike again, so helps us with insulin resistance, keeps us more satisfied. Personally, that was one thing I had done, changing my snack to nuts, and it really helped me level out during the day. And high in fiber, folate, and vitamin E. Okay, go wholly whole. Eat. Basically, that means eating foods closest to their original form. As I mentioned, almost all the foods consumed by the blue zoners, up to 90%, grow within a 10-mile radius of their home. Where we are, that's pretty unrealistic. But there are things that we can do. Each step of food, how it's processed, each step in processing, we lose nutrient density. This is probably one of our biggest challenges living where we live rather than in Sardinia. This is the classification of processed foods. There are 4 different ones. Group 1 would be unprocessed or minimally processed. So picking the vegetables, getting the meat from the butcher, getting the grains, milking the cow. Group 2, processed culinary ingredients. So that would be the olive oil, the grain after it's milled, honey, things like that. Group 3 would be considered processed food, bread, cheese, canned foods. And then ultra processed are the chips, the soda pop, those types of things. So ideally, we shift to the left. Dr. George mentioned visceral fat. This is an illustration of that. The red is the fat. We have subcutaneous, which is the fat that we typically see. That is not what I'm talking about the fat that forms beneath the abdominal wall in with the organs. Sugar and processed food increases visceral fat. So not moving and increasing sugar and processed foods. So increasing in visceral fat increases heart disease, diabetes, cancer, dementia, liver disease, metabolic syndrome. So when you think about it, when you eat whole foods, the opposite happens. And when you exercise, and the more intensely you exercise, you lose visceral fat. Does everyone know what metabolic syndrome is? So basically, it's a cluster of symptoms, and you need to have about 3 of those 5 symptoms. Help me if I miss one. And a low HDL or good cholesterol, an increased waist circumference, increased fasting blood glucose, high blood pressure. Elevated triglycerides, or the storage form of fat. Okay, so go wholly whole. Try to grow some of your own foods or trade with your neighbors. Purchase food from local producers. Read the ingredients. If you can't pronounce them, probably processed. Eat fewer ready-to-eat meals and make a homemade version of your favorite food item. This is when we go to my dog and pony show. So what I'm going to do here, Mary's going to help me. I am going to, we often buy a bottle of salad dressing at the grocery store. It's quick. This is a recipe. I'm going to challenge myself to make the salad dressing in the time it takes Mary to read the ingredients on the back of a salad dressing thing. So here we go.
Testing.
Ready, begin.
Water, vinegar,
No, don't tell her to read faster.
vegetable oil, soybean and or canola oil, sugar,
You can read faster.
balsamic vinegar, wine vinegar, grape juice water, garlic, cultured salt, enzymes, onions, Romano cheese made from cow's milk, part skim milk, cheese culture, salt, enzymes, spices, red bell peppers, xanthan gum, propylene glycol alginate. I have a lot of that in my kitchen. Olaspern paprika, potassium sorbate, and calcium disodium EDT8.
Yes, thank you. Anybody can make salad dressing. And I bet many of you have most of those ingredients. Tonight's meal. We had at least 3 colors, check. Prioritizing protein, check. Remember those salmon, the salmon that we had for our appetizers? And then we had The quinoa was in there too. Fiber, filled with fiber, sweet potatoes, the quinoa, all the veggies, fermented food. There's yogurt in it, topping the berries. Low sugar. Our dessert was fresh fruit. And low processed foods. Let's hear it for dinner tonight. Okay, I'm going to move quickly now. So blue zones, this is where it gets controversial. Drink coffee for breakfast, tea in the afternoon, wine at 5, and water all day. So coffee goes back and forth, but right now it's good. So contains antioxidants, less likely to die from stroke, heart disease, diabetes, Parkinson's, and Alzheimer's, protects the liver. We want to keep our maximum to 400 milligrams. An 8-ounce cup's about 95. But some of us are sensitive to caffeine, and too much increases heart rate, blood pressure, anxiety, and causes insomnia. Water, it's one of the things that you often see with folks in the hospital. They're dehydrated. It's easy to underhydrate. This is something to shoot for is half of your weight in ounces per day of water. Look at all the wonderful things it does for us. You know, it can help with decreasing headaches, improving cognition, detoxification. If you increase fiber, you want to increase water. If you increase protein, you want to increase water. So it's super important for us to have. This is when you have to hold on to your shorts. Lots of new information about alcohol. These studies are based on an average intake of 1 to 2 drinks daily. We're finding that it can decrease the brain volume and suppresses memory formation and storage. For our gut, so think about how we use alcohol. Alcohol kills bacteria, right? Our microbiome is full of bacteria, good and bad. Alcohol doesn't care. It will damage or kill a bunch of it, causing inflammation, and it damages the gut lining. When the gut lining gets too damaged, we have proteins and bacteria and all sorts of different things in the lumen of our gut, and we're trying to get it to eliminate. But it can cause a leaky gut, and that can go into the bloodstream, causing inflammation to our body and our brain. Alcohol is not the only thing that does that, but it could help that. Also, stress. There's a change in the circuitry of our brain that causes us to have a rise in cortisol, or our stress hormone, when we're not drinking. So it's causing us to want to drink more to be calmer, and then it just keeps cycling. Again, this is 7 to 14 drinks a week. And this is from you may have seen this, Office of the U.S. Surgeon General. The increase in cancer, risk of developing cancer, 7 types from alcohol. As you notice, it's kind of right along your digestive tract. So we think, where's resveratrol? That's a polyphenol we get from grapes. And it's helpful, and it's healthy for us, and it's beneficial. We need about 1 gram a day of it to be beneficial. But that could be 500 to 3,000 liters of red wine. So how much is safe to drink? We don't know yet. There's no official legal. So my recommendation would be take a look at what you're drinking. If you feel like it's more than 7 to 14 drinks a week, and then start decreasing it gradually. What's interesting is, if someone's deciding that they don't want to drink anymore and they want to try to heal, studies are showing that fermented foods helps heal the gut from alcohol. Okay, quickly. Eating style, we talked a lot about food, but how you eat is really important. Mindful eating, slowing down, chewing your food, actually counting how much you're chewing your food 30 times. That gives your body a chance to, your body works hard in the stomach to break down the food so it can digest it. So if you chew enough and swallow, you're going to help the digestive process. It also helps you notice food and taste it better. So just think about, sitting down, listening to the radio, watching the news on TV. Right now, it can be an inflammatory process. Eating can be. And so you want to make it something special. Intermittent fasting is another one, or meal spacing. We're finding that it's basically alternating between periods of eating and fasting. Intermittent fasting sounds extreme to me, but it isn't. It doesn't have to be. And I'll explain what you can do. Supports gut health, enhances cognitive health. We're finding that it helps with neuroplasticity. Also, autophagy, which is kind of healing and repairing in between meals. So there's a 16-8 or a 5-2 approach, or two that are more common, like a fasting window of 16 hours and an eating window of 8, or eating regularly 5 days a week and eating 500, 600 calories 2 days a week. But I feel a 12-12 is a really good option. And that would be, basically if you're done eating at 6, stop eating until 6 the next morning. That would be a really good way to start. Or if you are a late night snacker, just start lightening up the snack. Now, this isn't for everyone. Some people need small, frequent meals for their health. So that's not what we're talking about here. Okay, quickly, I'm just going to whip over the supplements. What's most important? Food is first, and that's what's most important. Sometimes we don't get the nutrient density. We don't, eat the food that's grown, 100 feet or a mile from our home. So sometimes we need to have supplements. Make sure when you're looking that it's third-party verified, and those labels should be on the product that you're looking at. A multivitamin and vitamin D are helpful. I've worked with folks that lived in Arizona and Montana. They would get sick every time they came to Montana and get better when they went to Arizona, until we figured out that they were becoming deficient in vitamin D while they were in Montana. So once they started supplementing, they were healthy again while in Montana. We're finding that, magnesium is starting to become the vitamin D that often many of us are deficient in. There's over 300 functions that magnesium helps us with. We're finding that magnesium glycinate is helpful for sleep, brain health. It's magnesium L-threonate. Constipation is magnesium citrate. And you start with 250 milligrams, and you can titrate depending on the person and someone you're working with. But that's generally the recommended amount. Pumpkin seeds, it's a really good, has a lot of magnesium, probably the most of anything. Creatine's a compound from amino acids. We think about creatine with muscle building, and it does help with that. But it also, we're finding that helps with cognitive performance, memory, word retrieval. So it's neuroprotective. 3 to 5 grams a day. It can usually put it in a powder. You can add it to a smoothie. So that's another one. B vitamins, especially B12 and B9, which is folate. There's been studies showing to help with cognition prior to diagnosis of mild cognitive impairment and Alzheimer's. And then finally, omega-3 fatty acids. If you're consuming at least fish twice a week, you may not need omega-3 fatty acids. Otherwise, you may want to. Definitely anti-inflammatory. There's connection with increased cognition, mental health. And you want EPA and DHA, 200 to 4,000 milligrams today. It depends on why you're taking it. Okay, we talked about a lot of things. What now? So my recommendation regarding diet and regarding exercise and any of these things, first take stock in what you're doing. Write it down. What are you doing well? Read it. Celebrate it. The fact that you're here in a social setting, learning possibly new things, eating wonderful food, getting outside in the snow. I mean, you're doing some wonderful things already. Then find your why. What motivates you to do this? Is it being with your grandkids? Is it preparing for a trip? Is it trying to avoid something that your relative is suffering from? Figure that out. Then determine those next steps, what you want to focus on. Then start small. Heck, start tiny and just start gradually building. Ask for help if you need it. Be your own best advocate. One thing that's really interesting is something called resistant starch. And you find it in potatoes, green bananas, things like that. And it's important. But what's interesting about it, it acts more like a prebiotic instead of a carbohydrate. A carbohydrate, typically, we get energy from carbohydrates, and it's important to have. But a prebiotic is something that passes through the small intestine into the large intestine, and then it helps with those postbiotics or creating the small chain fatty acids. What's interesting about those redundant starch is if you have a sweet potato or a potato and you cook it and then you cool it, it gives you the benefit of a resistant starch. Green bananas, green banana powder are all helpful. But as far as high quality carbohydrates, it's whole foods. Does that answer your question? Well, when you have a whole food carbohydrate, it also has a lot of fiber, and so it'll be more satisfying, so you naturally eat less of it. So you do need it, but if you use I like it. I'm a visual person, and I like to use a plate method. So if you had a plate, you cut it in half. You want the left half, or it could be the right half, could be non-starchy vegetables, all different colors. A quarter of that, the other half, you want protein, and the other quarter, you want carbohydrates.
Just real quickly, you've gone through an awful lot of information tonight. Is there any possibility that this PowerPoint could be on your website for a week or something?
Sure.
To look at it, please?
Yeah, we can have it be in our website, or we could email it, our slides to you.
Whichever you're comfortable with.
Okay.
I know it's your information. So
I also have a monthly newsletter, and I talked about resistant starch, talked about sourdough, talked about lots of things. You can sign up for it here and get it monthly, and you just get I don't send other stuff. So that's another option.